Right, let us start with questions to the Secretary of State for Education, Lincoln Jopp.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is focused on enhancing and spreading opportunity and growing our economy. We will ensure that a high-quality range of post-16 qualifications are available to sixth forms through the independent curriculum and assessment review, which is well underway, and through the continued rollout of T-levels.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer. In Spelthorne, we have got 6 secondary schools, but only 2 of them do A-levels. The rest are middle schools, taking you only up to GCSE. There have been some plans in the past for increased sixth form provision within Spelthorne. They've been in abeyance for 2 years. Would the Minister please agree to meet with me so that we can work out what's blocking this up and unlock that opportunity which she referred to in her first answer?
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question. Obviously, there were many things that needed attention with the previous government, and there were many things that were not accomplished and were not done. But my honourable friend from the other place, I'm sure she'd be willing to meet with the honourable member to discuss his concerns.
Anneliese Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Knowsley, we have no A-level provision. I've had students contact me to say that they have to travel for hours just to study. And I've had others see it as a barrier to continuing in school at all. Will my right honourable friend work with me to bring A-levels back to the constituency?
I thank my honourable friend for her very thoughtful question regarding her constituency and the provision. This government is committed to ensuring that young people have access to appropriate education and careers opportunities. However, the focus must be on delivering provision that offers young people the best learning experience and opportunities possible. In Knowsley, O-level provision has not been deemed viable due to a lack of demand. Knowsley students access high-quality post-16 academic provision in surrounding boroughs.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Speaker, staff in non-academised sixth form colleges are not being offered the same pay increase as staff in academised colleges. Now, it's understood a sum of money is available for post-16 education, but colleges have been left completely unclear as to whether this sum of money will be enough to offset the national insurance increase, or whether they'll find, like universities, that it's entirely eaten up by the national insurance increase. So will the Minister now agree to publish how much the national insurance increase will cost sixth form colleges, and if she won't publish it, why on earth not?
I find it absolutely shocking that the opposition minister has taken no responsibility for the many situations in which we find ourselves in, where this government has had to make extreme decisions that are in the best interest of students and colleges, and we're doing various reviews to try and make sure we put right the mess that we inherited.
Sorry, Jermy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Breakfast clubs break down barriers to opportunity so children are ready to learn. They're proven to boost attendance, attainment, well-being and behaviour, and they also provide essential childcare options to parents. In only a few days, hundreds of schools have applied to become early adopters, as they know how these clubs can improve children's life chances and, crucially, academic standards too.
Sorry, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for that response. As a former youth worker and a former school governor, this is an initiative that is going to make a huge difference. I've written to every school in my constituency encouraging them to apply. I'd be grateful if the Secretary of State could outline the next steps, please.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for the work that he is undertaking in drawing awareness to his schools about the opportunities this presents. The early adopters will be able to start from April 2025, up to 750 participating schools. We have tripled investment in breakfast clubs coming out of this budget, and schools have until the 20th of December to apply, Mr. Speaker, and I would encourage many more to do so.
Damian Hinds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are, of course, thousands of schools already in the National School Breakfast Programme, including many which are special schools and secondary schools, where actually there's a bigger effect of breakfast clubs on attendance. She talks a lot about breakfast clubs in primary schools, but what is the future for those already existing breakfast clubs in special schools and secondary schools?
I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman and for the interest that I know he takes in this area from his former roles. We are building on the existing programmes that exist, expanding investment and opportunities, and I agree with him that we do need to make sure that breakfast clubs are available to all children, including children with SEND, and that's why some of the early adopters will be in special and alternative provision schools to make sure that the rollout is a success.
Harpreet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the decision to bring in breakfast clubs? We know this will have an absolute amazing impact on pupils in Huddersfield and across the country. And I thank you again for doing this. Can you talk a little bit about the logistics of rolling out the programme across the country and how quickly we can do this?
As I said, Mr. Speaker, schools have until the 20th of December to apply to take part in the early adopters scheme. That's because we want to make sure that we establish the scheme, understand the benefits and the challenges before we roll out nationally across the country. We are determined to get this right, and we will build on the early adopters to deliver universal free breakfast clubs in every primary school in England.
Voaden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Children's Wellbeing Bill proposes that statutory breakfast programmes research from the Food Foundation shows that these clubs are more likely to benefit wealthier families because of the convenience they offer for working parents. In contrast, however, offering free school lunches to children is known to help iron out inequalities. 800,000 children in poverty are ineligible for free school meals, and more than 200,000 eligible children are not registered. Does the Minister agree that expanding school lunches and implementing auto-enrolment for free school meals for all these children would be an effective and equitable approach to tackling food insecurity and supporting our children's health and academic performance?
Very good.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. She is right to identify the importance of making sure that all of our children have healthy, balanced and nutritious diets, including at school. However, she will also know that the situation that this government has inherited from the previous government means that there are some very tough decisions that we have had to take. We will set out more in due course as we set out legislation that we have promised before this House through the King's Speech. I would slightly take issue with some of the evidence that she points to in terms of impact, because the evidence around breakfast clubs does demonstrate wider benefits for all children within the school in terms of attainment, well-being and overall performance.
O'Brien, Shadow Minister.
Mr. Speaker, because of the increase in national insurance, the Early Years Alliance are warning of a 20% increase in fees for early years parents. And that affects both nurseries and things like paid-for breakfast clubs. They say the budget will be, quote, a recipe for total disaster, with up to 4 in 10 early years providers closing unless drastic action is taken. So as a first step to averting that disaster, will the Minister now agree to publish the Department's estimates of how much that national insurance increase will cost early years providers? And if she won't publish it, why not? Doesn't the House deserve to have this information?
Mr. Speaker, I take the concerns of early years providers very seriously indeed, and we will set out in due course the funding rates and the approach that we are taking. However, what I would say to the honourable gentleman and to the party opposite is that they're very keen to complain about and criticise measures that we set out in the budget, yet the Leader of the Opposition herself said she would refuse to reverse it. They want all of the benefits, the teachers, the breakfast clubs, the rising standards. They are just not prepared to take the tough decisions necessary. And the Right Honourable Lady, as a former Treasury Minister, should know better, because she saw the scale of the fiscal inheritance that this government inherited from her party.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 3.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. O'Brien, winding you up.
He is, unfortunately. Apologies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 3 and 13 together. As the first step towards our opportunity mission, we have begun the critical work of recruiting 6,500 new expert teachers. We fully funded a 5.5% pay award, begun Ofsted reform, took steps to make teachers' work more flexible and ensure that workloads are more manageable. I am determined to reset the relationship between government and the workforce to drive high and rising standards for all of our children.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a recent local public meeting in Paulsgrove in Portsmouth, parents raised concerns around school provision and the learning environment. We sit as a local authority in the bottom 3 of the league tables. What steps is the Minister taking, not only to improve recruitment and retention in specialist subjects, but ensure that those key staff in specialist areas where different learning environments are needed in our classrooms?
My honourable friend is right to draw attention to the challenges we face in particular parts of the country, and there are no greater champions for Portsmouth and her and my honourable friend who sits here as a ministerial colleague. We are taking steps to make sure that we ensure that teaching is the go-to profession for our best graduates, as well as making sure we keep experienced, well-qualified professionals in teaching. And on specialist support in particular, we've set out measures around SEND reform and additional investment to address the challenges that my honourable friend identifies.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to begin by thanking all the teachers, support staff and senior leaders in my constituency of Southgate and Wood Green and across the country for the hard work that they do in making sure that our children receive the high-quality education they deserve. Teachers' pay, teachers' workload and the environment in which they work have been highlighted as reasons why teachers leave the profession. So can my right honourable friend tell the House what steps she's taking to address these reasons why teachers are quitting the profession?
I join my honourable friend in praising the amazing teachers and support staff in his constituency and across our country for the vital work that they do. I want to make sure that we not only keep teachers in the profession, but that they thrive in it, which is why I was so pleased to agree the recommendation of a 5.5% pay award. But we know, Mr Speaker, that there is much more to do to keep experienced, dedicated staff within the profession. And I know from speaking to many of them that so many of the challenges that they face go way beyond the school gate. And that's why I am proud to lead the work of child poverty together with the Work and Pensions Secretary to address some of those drivers of workload and pressures that many of our school staff are facing.
Right, we're a Hobhouse.
9,000 women in their 30s left teaching in 2022-23. This is the single biggest age group that has left teaching in Bath and across the country. Will the government improve maternity pay for teachers and teaching assistants?
The Honourable Lady is right to identify that particular challenge, and the statistic is one I've used many times myself, and I am really concerned about the big numbers of experienced women, particularly in their 30s, who leave teaching because they just find it too difficult to combine the work with family life. That's why, as part of what we've set out to the STRB process, we've asked them to look specifically at some of these challenges, and as part of our wider work across government to make work pay, we are ensuring better rights at work and making sure that maternity protections are rolled out for workers across our country.
Mr Smart.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I refer the House to my register of interest, which shows I'm in the 19th year of being a proud primary school governor. The Secretary of State will know that schools are led by teachers, but there are also many volunteers who go towards making our schools the brilliant places of learning that they are. Too many of the schools in my Hazel Grove constituency have vacancies for governors. What can the Secretary of State tell us about what she's doing to increase the recruitment and retention of school governors?
Mr Speaker, can I just start by congratulating the Honourable Lady for the important work that she does as a school governor. They are the unsung heroes across our communities in terms of the support that they provide to our schools. I recognise the challenge that she sets out increasingly around how we make sure that people are coming forward to take on those important roles. That's why we have been working with the bodies representing governors to make sure we are attracting more people into those important roles that do really drive forward standards in our schools.
Not to amend.
Question number 4, please.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I take questions 4 and 5 together. Schools with primary age pupils can now apply to become early adopter of the Universal Free Breakfast Club programme starting from April 2025. Up to 750 participating schools will be funded to provide access to a free Universal Breakfast Club lasting at least 30 minutes that includes food.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I thank the Minister for his answer. In my constituency of Watford, parents speak to me about their worries and their concerns regarding education provision and support. These range from being able to get their children into a good local school to how they're going to be able to continue to work while parenting. Will my right honourable friend outline further the benefits that breakfast clubs will bring both parents and pupils in constituencies like mine? Thank you.
This government is committed to making quick progress to deliver on our commitment to offer free breakfast clubs in every primary school. To ensure children are ready to learn at the start of the school day, the Chancellor announced a tripling of investment in breakfast clubs, driving improvements to behaviour, attendance and attainment, and for parents, more choices over childcare.
David Burton-Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I have contacted all primary schools in my constituency of Southend, West and Lee to encourage them to become early adopters. And with child poverty in my constituency being at 12.1% and food bank usage having risen by 433% over the last 5 years, does he agree with me that breakfast clubs will be part of the solution to help lift children out of poverty, giving them food in their belly to start the school day and encourage their parents back into part-time employment?
Hear, 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 hear.
Parents and carers up and down the country are still struggling with the cost of living, and as part of our mission to break down the barriers to opportunity, breakfast clubs give parents and carers the confidence that their child can access a breakfast should they need one, supporting families to work with the cost of childcare. It's a pity the party opposite can't say whether they back our plan, delivering better life chances for all children in all parts of the country.
Mr. Speaker, now nurseries and the small businesses that provide those before and after school clubs are being whacked by national insurance increases, and there's little clarity from the government about how these breakfast clubs are going to work. That potentially undermines another part of those businesses' business model. So what representations has the Education Secretary made to the Chancellor to deal with the massive hole that she's blown in her plans?
We take no lectures from the party opposite on how they failed children over the last 14 years. I've heard the concerns of providers about early years funding and recognise the importance of local authorities and providers to plan ahead for the pivotal expansion year, and therefore will be updating the House very soon on that particular issue.
Shokata. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a recent meeting with a constituent of mine, who happens to be the headmaster of the year winner, Farhan Adam, he lamented the fact that he spends more time addressing issues like food insecurity rather than what he loves doing, which is teaching. Which is not surprising. According to the Food Foundation, approximately 18% of households with children are experiencing food insecurity. Would the Secretary of Trade agree with me that, in addition to breakfast clubs, would lifting the two-child cap really help alleviating this problem? Thank you.
Well, breakfast clubs do offer a huge amount, including food and also club provision. I encourage the honourable member to consider this for rollout in his constituency. More broadly, he will be aware of the ministerial task force focused on child poverty, which will be reporting in the new year.
Sarah Green.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government recognises that to break down barriers to opportunity for children with special educational needs and disabilities, it will take a cross-government approach. To that end, I met recently with Minister Kinnock from the Department for Health and Social Care to discuss how we can work together to solve some of the challenges. The Department for Education is committed to ensuring adequate support for children with special educational needs and disabilities, and recently announced £740 million of capital funding to support children with SEND to learn and thrive in mainstream settings.
Sarah Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent National Audit Office report is clear that if it's not reformed, the SEN system is financially unsustainable. The Minister will know that since 2020, local authorities like Buckinghamshire Council have been able to exclude their dedicated school grant deficits from their main revenue budgets. That statutory override means local authorities do not breach their duty to set a balanced budget, but it's due to end in March 2026, and there's currently no identified solution. So can she share more on what urgent conversations she's having with colleagues to make sure local authorities get the certainty they need?
Yeah, the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government regulations which ring-fence the dedicated support grant deficits from Council's wider finance position were amended, and the statutory override up to March 26 does expire, and we're currently considering how best to consider and continue support for local authorities with deficits. But fundamentally, this is about reforming the system to ensure that more children can be educated within a mainstream setting, and that we do have those special school places available for those with the most complex needs.
Perrin Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perranporth Academy in my constituency plans to provide significant SEND provision, but currently the academy is one of 44 schools under a value for money review. As of last week, the head of Perranporth Primary School had not been consulted on this. Would the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss the plight of Perranporth Academy?
I appreciate the concerns that the Honourable Gentleman raised, and we do recognise the unprecedented pressures that local authorities are under. High needs funding, which we have increased recently, will benefit both mainstream schools as well as special schools, because we'll ensure that that funding reaches children who need it. But I recognise that there are particular issues and concerns that he raises, and if he will be happy to arrange a meeting for him to discuss this further.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Last week's announcement of capital funding to ensure mainstream schools are more inclusive for children with special needs is, of course, welcome. But the Minister will know that for many children with additional needs, even the most inclusive mainstream schools simply aren't appropriate. With 2 in 3 special schools at or over capacity, can the Minister provide a timeline for when the 67 planned special free schools will be delivered, and will she commit to looking favourably upon local authority applications for such schools?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her recognition of the additional funding. We do expect the funding to create thousands of new places, particularly in mainstream schools, but also in special schools as well as other specialist settings, and we'll confirm the allocations for individual local authorities in the spring, who know best how to invest in their local areas, and we're obviously keeping the free school programme under review, and we'll confirm that in due course also.
Alice MacDonald.
Question number 7, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supporting kinship's placements is critical to deliver our opportunity mission to ensure children grow up in safe, loving homes. We have recently announced a £40 million package to trial a kinship allowance. This will test whether an allowance can support more children to settle with family and friends.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently I met kinship carers in Norwich who do an amazing job in very difficult circumstances. One of the biggest challenges they face is financial support. Kinship's recent Forgotten report found that children in kinship care are really struggling with an inaccessible and complicated picture of support. Has the Minister made an assessment of extending relevant financial support, such as Pupil Premium Plus, to all children in kinship care?
Kinship carers play an absolutely crucial role, which this government acknowledges and very much appreciates. And I'm pleased to say that virtual school heads have been expanded to support kinship children, and I encourage kinship carers and schools to work together to support kinship children and those with identified needs. The department will continue to review this to ensure that children get the right support.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I very much welcome the Minister's response to that in relation to kinship carers? Can I ask her a follow-on from that question? What progress has been made on offering kinship carers respite provisions to give them short-term breaks to ease the pressures facing kinship families? Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and a very good one indeed. It's very important that kinship carers have the support they need, and obviously the children do as well. And the plan is that through the process of family group decision making, families will come together to have conversations how best to support children in kinship care, and issues such as respite, those types of things will be discussed to make sure the right provision is in place. This government is very much committed to getting it right for children, especially where the previous government has failed.
Anna Dixon.
Question 8. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will take questions 8, 10, 11 and 15 together. The previous government left behind a skills system that was fragmented and failing. Falling numbers of apprenticeships for young people, adults unable to find the training courses they need, businesses confused, no plan to equip people with the skills for the economy and opportunities of tomorrow. We are turning the page by establishing Skills England to unify this fragmented landscape and bringing forward a plan for post-16 education and skills, which will deliver the education and training pathways our economy, employers and learners need.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3.8 million people aged 19 and over benefit from skills education in England every year, and I'd like to pay tribute to all the hard-working professionals employed in further education, including at Shipley College in my constituency. However, businesses in Salter tell me that they struggle to recruit people with the digital and tech skills that they need locally. I welcome steps taken by the government to address skills shortage vacancies. Will the Secretary of State assure me that the benefits of Skills England will be felt by businesses in Shipley constituency? Thank you.
I join my honourable friend in paying tribute to the staff at Shipley College, and she is right. It's time we took skills much more seriously as a country. We were left behind skill shortages in many key areas, including in the areas that she has identified. We will be giving businesses the flexibility that they have been asking for to unlock growth, drive opportunities through the reformed Growth and Skills Levy.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I speak to small businesses in my constituency of Hexham, they regularly decry an inability to recruit young people from the area who want to remain in the area that they grew up in. So can the Secretary of State assure me that we'll be working with small and medium-sized businesses to make sure that young people can remain where they grew up should they wish to, as was sadly so hard to do under the previous government?
Mr. Speaker, following on from Small Business Saturday, I think we all recognise that small employers are the backbone of our economy. And he's right, it shouldn't be the case that young people in places like Hexham should have to get out in order to get on. That's why we're creating Skills England, to fill those skills gaps that we see across our country. And it's why that Skills England will also work with our regional mayors to make sure that we are addressing some of the regional inequalities that we see, but also some of the opportunity areas where we know that some particular parts of the country have a real ability to drive forward growth, jobs and opportunities.
Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The South Staffordshire College's Creative Arts faculty is based at Lichfield College in my constituency. In January, they will open a new state-of-the-art recording studio and rehearsal space, which will allow students to develop skills in both music performance and music production. This will ensure that they're well prepared for careers in the creative arts for their entire future. Does the Minister agree with me, or sorry, does the Secretary of State agree with me, that investments like this are essential for the UK to maintain its role as global leader in the creative arts, and that government should be supporting them wherever they can?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker, and that's why through the budget we were able to set out an additional £300 million of capital investment for our colleges, and I'm sure that the kind of opportunities that the honourable member has set out in this House are just the kinds of things we need to see across our country. The creative industries have a crucial role to play in driving growth in communities right across our country, and through our curriculum and assessment review we will make sure that all young people have the chance to study a wide range of subjects.
Jane Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I had the pleasure of visiting South Essex College in my constituency, which offers a significant variety of post-16 skills-based courses, from theatre and music production through digital skills and robotics to hospitality. They're keen to raise the aspirations of local young people, matching their ambitions with the needs of employers in the region. What role does the Minister see the further education sector playing in delivering the government's skills agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My friend is absolutely right that our further education colleges have a crucial role to play. Yes, in providing opportunities for our young people, but also for adult returners to education as well, and as the strong impact that they bring on regional economic growth. We think that they have a bigger role to play still, and that's why they will be a central part of what we take forward around skills through Skills England.
Stephen Bartley.
At the general election, the government said it would specifically target technical training in areas like construction, engineering and digital in order to take pressure off immigration into key roles. So why is it failing to act on the pay gap between further education teaching posts and those in schools?
Where I would agree with the right honourable gentleman is that there is a very big skills gap that, in terms of, sorry, not skills gap, pay gap between further education. And I would just gently observe to him that that took place over the last 14 years that his party was in power. I absolutely accept the challenge that more is required because our further education colleges have a crucial role to play. But that is a situation that we inherited from the party opposite.
Ellie Chance.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State will be aware that all analyses of the supply of green skills, such as the recent Global Climate Talent Stocktake, show a massive undersupply of these skills. Demand is growing at double the rate that the supply is growing. So can I ask, what are the government's plans to address this important shortfall? And in particular, will she or her officials meet with me to discuss how this might include unblocking the approval of new qualifications, for example, the currently blocked Natural History GCSE? Thank you.
I agree that there are lots of job opportunities in the years to come in clean technology, in green jobs and much more besides. That's why we've started work very quickly, Mr. Speaker, to begin the process of legislating to establish Skills England, which already exists in shadow form. It has already undertaken an audit of what more is required, and I know that there are lots of fantastic new jobs out there connected to construction, engineering, that that align very much with our drive towards net zero. I'd be more than happy to make sure that the Honourable Lady gets a meeting on the topic that she raises.
Tim Farron.
Mr Speaker, there's never been a greater urgency for us to equip our young people with the skills that we need to enter a career in farming, and yet only a half of those who took level 3 agricultural apprenticeships in Cumbria last year completed them, and there were no availability of any level 4 apprenticeships. Will she look at this worrying situation, and will she pay personal attention to it and provide the funding necessary for us to have agricultural apprenticeships in Britain's leading agricultural county?
Good question. I'd be more than happy to look at the issue that the Honourable Gentleman sets out, to look at it personally to make sure that we do more in this area. He will be aware that at the moment we have a review underway around level 3 qualifications, but we also know that as a country we need to do much more around level 4 and level 5 qualifications as well. So if the Honourable Gentleman would share further information with me, I'd be happy to look into it.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, a Litchett school in my constituency of Mid Dorset North is proud of its record in delivering level 3 BTECs, and in fact its sixth form would not survive without the BTECs. What assurance can the Secretary of State give me about the continuation of these really important qualifications that suit less academically able children?
Yeah. Mr Speaker, we're making good progress on our post-16 qualifications reform review, which we'll be reporting by the end of the year, so the Honourable Lady won't have long to wait to hear the outcomes of that review.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Mr Speaker, before the election, Labour promised to let businesses spend 50% of their apprenticeship levy money on non-apprenticeships, but now ministers say that that commitment is under review. We do know that ministers are taking away businesses' flexibility to spend their own money on level 7 apprenticeships, big change to the principles of the levy. So can the Secretary of State confirm when her review of her own policy will conclude, and will she also rule out doing to level 6 apprenticeships what she's doing to level 7 apprenticeships?
Mr Speaker, we remain committed to reforming the failing apprenticeship levy, turning into a growth and skills levy with up to 50% of flexibility for employers, driving new opportunities in growth areas across our country, alongside making sure that we deliver many more apprenticeship starts for our young people. We inherited a situation where there were falling apprenticeship starts for our young people at a time when we urgently need to invest in the skills of the next generation. We will work with business through Skills England to drive forward what is required for adult learners as well as for young people too.
Does have enough?
Question number 9, please.
All children deserve a rich and broad education so they don't miss out on subjects like music, art and drama. As part of our Opportunity mission, we've launched an independent, expert-led curriculum and assessment review, and we're committed to ensuring young people are supported to study creative subjects.
Dr. Simon Hofer.
In the last 14 years, Mr Speaker, the amount of creative education, particularly at primary level, has been reducing and reducing. So I really welcome what the Minister has said. There's quite a lot of evidence now that actually doing creative things and learning creative subjects improves our well-being and our mental health and improves our academic learning. So would she support me in my campaign to bring musical instrument teaching to every primary school in the country, not just the more well-off ones?
The Honourable Gentleman speaks with great wisdom, which is why we have confirmed £79 million of funding for a national network of music hubs to give children and young people the opportunity to learn to sing, to play an instrument, to create music and to progress their musical interests and talents. And we've also launched the Music Opportunities Pilot with £5.8 million of funding over 4 years to support students with special educational needs and disabilities and those with less means to access music, the opportunities to do so also.
Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary of State has made clear she'd like more time spent on creative subjects, but she must ensure this does not come at the expense of an academic education. Last week's international education stats found that English children are the best at maths in the Western world. This is brilliant news and testament to the hard work of teachers and pupils. It is also down to a world-class curriculum put in place by the previous government. Will the Secretary of State finally celebrate these results? And will she instruct her curriculum review that it must not dilute academic standards and put this progress at risk.
You would never know from the shameless sense of pride, that the Conservative government left England's school standards getting worse. Members opposite may be happy that half of disadvantaged pupils in state schools didn't meet the requirements in reading, writing or maths at the end of primary school, but we are not. We do not think their record is anything to be proud of. Standards are the watchword for this Labour government, and not just for some of our children, but for all of our children.
Catherine Fuchs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 12.
Secondary schools are currently required to teach about sexual exploitation, and this Labour government is committed to halving violence against women and girls within a decade. Education has a key role to play in addressing this.
Catherine Fuchs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I agree entirely. And as we near the end of the 16 days of activism, it's really important that we continue to talk about commercial sexual exploitation, which is the exchange of money, accommodation, services or goods in return for sex acts. It impacts on all young people's lives, including in my constituency of Monmouthshire, particularly through exposure to violent online pornography, as well as via the damaging message conveyed by the legal impunity of pimping websites. Does the Minister agree with me that schools should be supported to address these issues as part of a whole school approach to combating sexism and sexual harassment, as advocated by organisations like UK Feminista?
I, of course, agree with my honourable friend that taking a whole school approach to tackling sexual abuse and violence is incredibly important. The statutory guidance is very clear that relationships and sexual health education should be delivered in the context of a whole school approach. And through our Safer Streets and Opportunities mission, the government is also considering how to best support schools to tackle this.
Snell.
14, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are making good progress with the review of qualifications reform, which is focused on Level 3 qualifications scheduled to have funding removed on the 31st of July 2025. We are working quickly to provide certainty to the sector, and we will publish the outcomes of this review before the end of the year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I draw the House's attention to my declaration as a governor of a sixth form college. I do thank the Minister for that answer, but she will know that the certainty that she hopes to give simply isn't there. Colleges have had to put off printing prospectuses. They have had open evenings where they haven't been able to confirm what they're going to teach. They've done assemblies with schools where they've been able to say what they can teach. Staff allocations. They've even been asked to make projections on T-level funding. For T-levels, they're not sure they're going to have the numbers to do because they won't know what the equivalent BTECs are going to be standing aside, and they're going to enter 2025 not knowing what they can teach. So can I ask the Minister, does she think that's acceptable, and what support would there be for colleges who are going to have to turn around whatever the outcome of the review is very quickly?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for really pushing me on this and really explaining the situation very well indeed. I seek to assure him that the sector that I acknowledge, I seek to assure him and the sector that I acknowledge the uncertainty and difficulties of this. Following the election, we moved quickly to pause the defunding schedule for the 31st of July 2024, and I fully appreciate that colleges need time to plan their provision and that students also need time to plan their courses. We are working as quickly as possible to conclude the review, and we will publish the outcomes before the end of the year.
Chris MacDonald.
Number 16, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 16 and 23 together. Tackling child poverty is at the heart of our opportunity mission. After a decade of Conservative government, far too many children are growing up in poverty. It is a scar on our society, a blight on young lives, and the centrepiece of the Conservatives' shameful legacy. The Secretary of State for Work and Pensions and I are getting on with the job of chairing the Child Poverty Task Force, which has started the urgent work to publish our child poverty strategy in spring 2025.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. During the summer, I visited the Holiday Activities and Food Programme run by Stockton Borough Council, which provides a healthy meal for low-income families in my constituency. Can my right honourable friend provide some assurance that funding for that programme will continue into the next year?
I'd like to join with my honourable friend in extending my thanks to the staff at Stockton Borough Council for their hard work on the holidays activity and food programme this last year. We are working through our budget settlement to agree measures to support families during the holidays, and we will set out in due course what further steps we can take. He will know, as I do, that whilst talent is spread across our country, opportunity is not. And his constituency is full of children who the Conservatives let down. This Labour government will break down barriers.
We know that children growing up in poverty on average do less well in education, with many children also having to miss out on other enriching school activities such as days out because they simply cannot afford them. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that every child, including the almost 7,000 children living in poverty in my constituency of Sherwood Forest, should have the same opportunity to thrive at school, and that tackling child poverty is essential in ensuring every child can succeed?
I agree, Mr Speaker. It's absolutely right that children in her constituency deserve every chance to achieve and thrive, and that is the ultimate goal of our Child Poverty Task Force. As the Prime Minister set out just last week through our Plan for Change, we want to give every child the best start in life, and that's just not possible if millions of children across our country are growing up in poverty.
Ellen Morgan.
Question 17, please, Mr Speaker.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer questions 17 and 22 together. The Government's ambition is that all children with special educational needs receive the right support to succeed where possible in mainstream schools. We'll strengthen accountability, we'll improve inclusivity through Ofsted and support professionals to develop their SEND expertise, and high needs funding will increase by almost £1 billion next spending year.
Ellen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Children with special educational needs and disabilities in Shropshire are relatively poorly funded compared to children in the rest of the country, including for those with the highest level of needs, their top-up funding is just £7,000, meaning that the schools that support them can't even afford a full-time teaching assistant to help them with their progress. Can the Secretary of State describe to me what she's doing to ensure that that funding is fairly distributed across the country so that children with special educational needs can get the help they need wherever they live?
Yeah. We know that local authorities have been significantly impacted by increased demand for education, health and care plans and challenges with workforce capacity also. We do expect the £740 million of additional investment to create thousands of new places in both mainstream and special schools and in specialist settings, and we'll obviously confirm those allocations to specific local authorities in the spring, and they know how best to invest in their local areas to increase capacity as needed.
Dr. Elpington.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. 1,800 pupils, more than 1,800 pupils, were absent from school for more than a third of the time across Surrey last year. Children with special educational needs. Sencos are incredibly frustrated that EHCPs are coming back from our local council with the wrong names, describing the wrong conditions and offering the wrong packages of care. Teachers are stretched. Head teachers can't stretch their budgets any further, and parents, one or both, are having to give up employment in order to look after their children. And yet the leadership of Surrey County Council has said that there's not a problem with special educational needs, that there are parents who are too articulate. Would the Minister please meet with me and with Sencos to discuss this very serious...
Order. Can I just say to Honourable John, it's much easier to get to the questions than the preamble that I can't help the people in on. I think the question is,
Following the most recent local area SEND inspection by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission back in September 2023, the Department, working alongside NHS England, continue to track progress of the Surrey Partnership that it's making against the areas for improvement that are identified, offering support and advice to the local authority. I appreciate the significant concerns that he outlines, and will continue to keep the situation under review.
Polly Billington.
Mr Speaker, Bradstow Special School in my constituency supports some of the most vulnerable children across the South East. More than half of them are from families in Kent. And yet Tory-led Kent County Council have refused to pay £2 million in fees, contributing to the school now facing closure. Kent have been offered this school for free, including all of the land, and yet are refusing to keep this school open. Will she join me in urging Kent County Council to take responsibility and work with the governing body, staff and families of their children to ensure we can keep this vital school open?
It's vital that if we're going to improve the situation that far too many children face in relation to special educational needs and disabilities, and meeting the demand that we know is outstripping supply at the moment, that areas do work together in partnership, and that's why we are very much recommending that local authorities work together with health partners, with local schools to solve some of these challenges together, and the Department of Education will work closely with them also to make sure that every child gets the education they deserve.
Speaker, the Audit Commission report published in October highlights that special educational needs places in independent schools can cost 2.5 times that of state schools. So does she agree with me that if we're going to ensure that children in the future get the support that they need, we're going to have to assist local authorities in expanding the number of special needs places that they have?
So the honourable gentleman raises an important point, which is why we know the situation needs reform. We know that we need much greater capacity within mainstream schools so that children with special educational needs and disabilities can be educated alongside their peers where that is the appropriate place for them to be, but also that there are special school places available where needed. And that's the reason behind the £740 million of additional investment that we have put in to support mainstream schools to expand their specialist provision.
Let's get to topicals. Mr. McVeigh.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, children growing up in our country deserve the best start in life, nothing less. That's why last week the Prime Minister published his plan for change, including an ambitious target of ensuring that by the end of the Parliament, a record proportion of children are ready for school. We'll do this by transforming the early years, creating and expanding nurseries, rolling out childcare, strengthening family services and focusing on early intervention. And Mr. Speaker, as we approach the end of the term, I'd like to wish you and all of the staff in this House a very Merry Christmas, and also to send my thanks to all of the staff working across education.
Mr. McVeigh.
Having met with private schools in and around Houghton, where my constituents attend, they have all told me that despite having applied for a VAT number, not one of them has received it. So can the Minister explain to me what discussions she's having with the Chancellor to put this right, particularly in light of the rushed implementation of this misguided ideological policy in January?
Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to make sure that the point the Right Honourable Lady raises is looked into. But what I would say to her on the wider policy priority that it underlines, our party are determined, and this government is determined, to expand opportunity right across our country for the vast majority of children who go to state schools. They might be happy to defend the indefensible, but what I would say to her is that should they wish to oppose what we are setting out, they need to say how they're going to pay for it.
Nadia Whittam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been contacted by many parents who are desperate to secure a place in a special school for their child, but in Nottingham there is a severe lack of availability. While I wholeheartedly support efforts to improve SEND support in mainstream schools and deliver an education system that is truly inclusive, it seems clear that we also desperately need an increase in special school places. What steps is the government taking in this area?
I appreciate my honourable friend's concern, and as she will know, this government inherited what was a broken system from the previous government. We want to make sure all children with SEND receive the support that they need to achieve and thrive. We have announced £740 million high needs capital funding for the next year for additional places that will support our ambition to improve inclusivity in mainstream schools.
Right, Shadow Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Mr. Speaker, the Freedom of Speech Act was passed by Parliament prior to the election. By the end of its passage through both houses, the Labour Party had agreed in principle with the need for the Act. However, just after the election, government sources said the Act was a Tory hate speech charter. Now, I read in the papers that the Department might enact the legislation without the tort. Can I ask the Secretary of State to clear up this mess and tell the House, with regards to the Freedom of Speech Act, what is her plan?
Mr Speaker, this government is absolutely committed to freedom of speech and academic freedom. We want to make sure that our universities are places of intellectual challenge, of rigour, and where, yes, people will be exposed to views with which they might disagree. We did pause commencement of the previous government's legislation in this area because of serious concerns that were raised by very many people about how this legislation would apply, including from minority groups. We are consulting with stakeholders and we intend to set out our position in due course.
Since the Secretary of State decided to pause this legislation, gender-critical women, among others, have racked up enormous legal fees that have caused some to remortgage their houses. Professor Jo Phoenix has said publicly that the Act, if in force, would have saved her that precise ordeal. Inaction has consequences. This delay is causing harm. Will the Secretary of State accept this and get on with implementing the legislation?
Mr Speaker, I do accept that academics should be free to express a wide range of views, and there will be views that sometimes people will find challenging. But what also matters is to have workable legislation. The legislation that her party set out, I'm afraid, just didn't do that, and there were so many challenges that we have had to consider raised by minority groups. The previous Universities Minister herself said that she was concerned about what this would mean for Holocaust denial on campus. We need to get this right.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, for 14 years, governments have criticised teachers, and this has had a dreadful effect on recruitment and retention. Could the Minister please update the House on the measures she is taking to tackle this very serious problem?
I thank the honourable gentleman and take the opportunity as well to wish a Merry Christmas to all of our teachers when they finally get to the Christmas break, and school support staff. But we are working really at pace to recruit 6,500 new teachers. We fully funded the 5.5% pay reward. We've removed reductive headline Ofsted judgments. We're working to reduce workloads and ensure more flexibility. And we've announced £233 million package of recruitment incentives. We are very committed to supporting our teaching workforce.
Spurson Manera Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. A new report from the IPPR shows that the most deprived areas have a third fewer childcare places than the most affluent. If the government is really serious about improving school readiness amongst our children, will the Secretary of State look at Liberal Democrat proposals to triple the early years pupil premium so we can tackle this disadvantage gap when it matters most?
Mr Speaker, I do recognise the challenge that the Honourable Lady sets out, and do recognise the very real challenge that we have inherited as a government where it comes to provision of places. That's why our approach around rolling out nurseries based within primary schools is a crucial part of creating the places that are required. There is more that we need to do. The system, the sector overall does require reform, and we will be setting out more in this area before too long.
Mr Speaker, my constituent Alison Duxbury is unable to finalise her divorce because of delays to the assessment of the teacher's pension scheme that her husband occupies at the moment. Alison is not alone. There are many others who are suffering serious stress and unacceptable delays because of this delay. Will the Minister meet with me to unlock this bureaucratic logjam?
Absolutely recognise the difficulties that he has outlined, and it's due to changes to pension entitlement that have caused a significant backlog in processing that we have inherited. But good progress is now being made. The Department and the Administrator are focused on speeding it up, and I do appreciate the concerns the gentleman has raised. So if he wanted to write to me with more detail, or indeed a meeting can certainly be arranged.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, I was recently able to visit and see the benefit of an SEN unit in All Saints School in Sidley. Does the Minister think SEN units have got a bigger role to play, and would they meet with me to discuss some of the challenges that they have with funding?
I recognise the question that he raised, and it's very important that we have the right balance of mainstream inclusion and specialist provision where it's needed. And if it would be helpful for him to have a meeting to discuss the specific concerns in his area, I'd be more than happy to arrange that.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the chair of the APPG for Babies, I'm delighted that the announcements on Thursday included a one-year continuation of the current Start for Life programme, which provides funding for 75 local authorities. We would, however, very much like to see all authorities be able to access this funding in future so that every child is guaranteed the best start. Would the Secretary of State be willing to meet with the APPG for Babies in the new year to outline her long-term vision for supporting child development at the youngest ages?
My honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the importance of early support for babies. The Plan for Change sets out we will improve support through pregnancy and early childhood. The Start for Life programme is the responsibility of health and social care ministers, but officials will be happy to meet with her to discuss this important issue.
Sarah Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask what steps are currently underway to recruit and retain more educational psychologists so that children like those in Cheshire and Amersham aren't waiting as long as they are for the assessment they need?
Excellent question.
The Honourable Lady raises a very important point. We're working at pace to ensure we have more professionals, along with the Department for Health as well, that is also ensuring we have the right workforce to support all children with special educational needs. I can write to her with the specific details of the steps that are being taken.
Tom Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After years of failure by West Sussex County Council to properly plan for secondary school places, parents in Shoreham are facing another year of waiting to find out if their children will have to travel a long distance for their education. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss their concerns?
I thank the honourable gentleman. Local authorities have a statutory duty to ensure there are sufficient secondary school places and that children can go to school, and travel should not be a barrier to getting to school. I know how important this issue is for parents, and I'd be happy to arrange a meeting for you to discuss, for the honourable gentleman to discuss this issue further.
Rosie Duffield.
Speaker, my constituent 14-year-old Lewis has been out of school for the last 2 years and disrupted for 4. He's yet another child whose parents have been told by Kent County Council that he must attend a particular school despite the school saying it's unable to meet his specific educational needs. This is typical of the battle that many of the families I see have to go through for years, costing them time, money and causing infinite stress. Will the Minister meet with me and Lewis's desperate parents to ensure that he's one of the last children to suffer from Kent County Council's continual neglect of SEN children?
The Honourable Lady raised an important matter, and one that far too many people are having to raise. I'd be happy to meet with her and to discuss this further, but also reiterate the steps we are taking to fix this broken SEN system.
Chair of the Select Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that good quality early years education can play a significant role in closing the disadvantage gap. Yet the government has inherited a situation in which families living in disadvantaged areas are the least likely to be able to access good quality childcare. How will the Secretary of State ensure that access to good quality childcare and early years education is at the heart of the government's child poverty strategy?
I agree very strongly, and that's why alongside additional investment there must come reform, and we will make sure that the areas that she identifies are addressed, and I look forward to discussing them in front of the Select Committee before too long.
And Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited the excellent Haven SEN unit at Budehaven Community School in North Cornwall. I invite the Minister to visit so it can be replicated elsewhere. Does the Minister plan to extend the unit's funding beyond February's cliff edge, given that Cornwall Council's SEN deficit is currently 12 million and counting?
Local authorities normally support special units and schools with funding from their high needs budget, but officials will be happy to investigate the funding arrangements for this school. Cornwall County Council is being allocated a provisional funding amount of over 86.6 million in the 2025-6 financial year through the high needs national funding formula, but we're happy to take away the particular issue that he raises.
Helena Dollamore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parents, teachers and students in my constituency were horrified to find out that the University of Brighton Academy Trust has been taking a whopping 20% of the government grant meant for our local schools and education. Can the Minister tell me what she is doing to resolve these issues and make sure that every child in Hastings and Rye gets the best quality education?
I agree with my honourable friend. Outcomes in some of the schools in Hastings are just not good enough, and we are all determined to drive up standards. Department officials continue to work with the University of Brighton Academies Trust on it. We're committed to ending its current financial model and collaborating with school leaders on future budget setting to ensure that we can drive high and rising standards in every school, including in Hastings.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Research shows that money habits are instilled in young people from the age of 7. What is the government doing to improve financial education in schools, particularly in England, where it's not currently on the national curriculum?
Mr Speaker, we've launched our curriculum assessment review to make sure that issues such as the one the Honourable Gentleman identifies are taken into account. It's just a shame that from the party opposite we seem to hear nothing but negativity about the curriculum and assessment review. We are determined to make sure that all of our children get a brilliant education, high standards, strong academic outcomes, but absolutely the kinds of life skills he is right to identify.
Gavin Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're all keenly aware of the significant challenges that FE colleges continue to face, including difficulties around the pay agreements and funding, which aren't helped by the opportunism from the party opposite, who are responsible for the mess they're in the first place. Can the Minister tell us more about the steps she is taking to ensure these engines for opportunity for our young people, such as Leighton Sixth Form College, have the support they need to thrive?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. This government recognises the vital role that FE teachers play in equipping learners with the skills they need and to drive growth in our economy. We're totally committed, we're keeping our eye on it and we're keeping our finger on it as well. We've provided an additional £300 million for further education to ensure young people are developing the skills this country so desperately needs.
Sir Oliver Dowden.
Over the weekend, a manual prep in my constituency announced that it was closing, citing VAT on school fees and other damaging Labour policies. Does the Secretary of State share my concern about the damage this will do to Jewish children growing up in my constituency and the surrounding area, depriving them of access to a Jewish education which they do richly deserve?
The government's fiscal inheritance is so dire that we have to take tough decisions, but necessary decisions, and take them quickly. Removing VAT exception from January is the right thing to do to deliver for every child across our country.
Tom Hayes.
I was delighted to spend Friday afternoon with Cat's Whiskers Day Nursery, and earlier this year I visited Top's Day Nursery, which is ranked 9th in the department's top 100 apprenticeship employers. Can the Department for Education outline the steps they're taking to increase the number and quality of childcare apprenticeships?
I agree with my honourable friends, and I pay tribute to the providers in his constituency for the work that they are doing. We want to see great careers right across the early years sector, from apprenticeships all the way up to graduate level, and I'd happily meet with him to discuss this further.
Patrick Spencer.
Thank you. 8. Reconfirm her commitment to academies and to the policy of academisation.
Mr Speaker, we want all schools to do well for our children, to drive high and rising standards, regardless of the name above the door.
Rachel Maskell.
Mr Speaker, academisation has created fragmentation in lines of accountability, leaving local authorities carrying much risk, not least when it comes to SEND provision. Will my right honourable friend look at the governance structures over academies to ensure that local authorities can carry the responsibility and be able to deliver for children with SEN?
The Honourable Lady raises an important point, and rather than an obsession with structures and names over doors, we're determined to make sure that every child has a good school in every community, and that they work together within local communities with their local authority to cooperate on place planning, on admissions, and to make sure that every child gets the best education, and we have high and rising standards in every school.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. At just £952, the East Riding of Yorkshire has the lowest high needs block funding of any local authority in the country. Ministers have committed themselves to looking again at the formula so we can have the right one. Can they please commit to do everything they can to bring it in for the next financial year, so we don't have another year in which we have grossly unfair and disproportionate distributions of funding?
The right honourable gentleman will know that this is a complex area. It would not have been possible to make any changes to the funding formula this year, but we will look in the future at what changes might be required. And of course, I'm sure as part of that process, he will make representations on behalf of his constituents.
Response.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I talk to special educational needs coordinators across Harlow and across Essex on a regular basis, in part because my best friend is one. He tells me the number of special educational needs coordinators, it's easy for me to say, who are leaving the profession because of the high workload and the stress that it causes. Can I ask what support this government will give to ensure that special educational needs coordinators get the mental health support and the support they need?
The honourable gentleman is a strong advocate for special educational needs in his community. We know that SENCOs perform a vital function in making sure that children and their families get the support they need to access the education they deserve. He is right that they deserve support as well, and we need to encourage more people to be trained up in and understand the needs of children with special educational needs so that everybody can do their part to create an inclusive education system.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Businesses report that cyber attacks are going up, but also is the amount of time that they have to wait to actually employ someone to deal with those cyber attacks. So what is the department doing to ensure that in the future that skills gap is filled?
He's right that we do see skills gaps where it comes to cyber, to digital and tech overall. That's why Skills England will drive forward our work in addressing those skills gaps, but also in making sure that our young people have great careers in the years to come. And this is one area in particular where I know that there is lots of opportunity for our country, for young people to enjoy that fantastic career.
Durham Puffey.
Speaker, Itchen Sixth Form College in my constituency was recently judged to be outstanding by Ofsted. Will the Minister join me in congratulating the college? And do they agree that the future success requires us to sort out financial inconsistencies like lecturers' pay and VAT liabilities?
My honourable friend does identify a number of the challenges that we've inherited as a new government. We are working as quickly as we can to address them. We want to make sure that teachers right across the sector, whether that's in our schools, FE sector or colleges, get the support, the pay and the recognition that they deserve.
Sean Barrett.
In Brighton's non-academy sixth form colleges, current teachers' strike action stems largely from the government not providing the same funding to cover pay uplifts as it does for schools and academies. Will the Minister urgently correct this unjustified funding anomaly?
Mr Speaker, at the budget we set out an additional £300 million for further education. The Honourable Lady will know that the Government is not responsible for and plays no role in setting or making recommendations about teacher pay in FE colleges, and we are looking closely at sixth form colleges too as a part of this. Again, a part of the challenge that we inherited from the last Government.
Sarah Smith.
I welcome this Government's ambition to ensure that 40,000 extra children are school ready every year. However, at schools like West End and Oswald in my constituency, they don't have extra primary classrooms to make extra nursery provision available. Will the Minister consider capital funding in the future to ensure lots of primary schools have the opportunity to extend that high-quality nursery provision?
Obviously, the Government's committed to rolling out school-based nurseries and absolutely welcome the opportunity to meet with the Honourable Member to discuss these issues further.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I can assure the Education Secretary we're very positive about schooling in this country. I'm sure the Education Secretary will want to thank all school leaders for their work in helping English schools to soar up the PISA and TIMSS rankings. But will she join me in sending personal congratulations to Catherine Birbal-Singh, whose approach to discipline, the curriculum and teacher-led instruction makes her school, Michaela, the best in the country?
Mr Speaker, I will always celebrate the fantastic work of our school leaders and teachers because they are how we will drive high and rising standards across our school system. But I think the Honourable Gentleman and I have probably more in common than he realises. He might recognise these words. The greatest injustice in Britain today is that your life is still largely determined not by your efforts and talents, but by where you come from, who your parents are and what schools you attend. This is wrong. The words of the 2017 Conservative manifesto that he was involved in writing. This government will right those wrongs and break the link between background...
Can I just say, it might be easier if I say at the beginning, it's all their fault, you've been in power, because that's every question we're not covered. Oliver Wright.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I recently met with Hessenford Primary School in my constituency, which is in a dire state. Will the Minister meet with me and Lancashire County Council to see what we can do to repair this school, the biggest in Lancashire by class number, and make sure that it's fit for children's ambitions in Burnley?
We are committed to improving the condition of the estate through the annual funding programme and will happily meet with my honourable friend to discuss these issues further.
Right, that completes questions.